inside of you.
Pay attention to the psychological aspects. You would have a competitive advantage over any opponent because you would have the mind of an athlete. Michael Strahan set the NFL sack record in 2001 season, and he did so earning 22.5 sacks by using a technique that was written about in Sports Illustrated after he got the record. And I want to share with you a little bit of that technique and a little bit of the theory behind how you can have the optimal arousal level for peak performance in sports. Michael Strahan, when he was competing prior to that season, was very talented. But unfortunately, he wasn't performing that well in the fourth quarter. His sacks were going down. And so he worked with a gentleman who began to study that Michael Strahan was so fired up for the football game hours before the game. And when he went out there for the beginning part of the game, the opening kickoff, he was on fire. But his energy gradually drained. You see, he was getting too amped up too soon. Do you know any athletes like that? Has that ever happened for you? And so I want you guys to have the optimal arousal level for peak performance in sports. And it's about hitting the certain spot on this performance curve and understand this curve so you can time that intensity level. So for example, we've got this curve with stress on the bottom, and as stress increases, your performance goes up. But it's the bell-shaped curve. And at the top of that curve is a rectangular box. And in that box is where you want to compete. That's where you want to spend the entire game. And right at the very tippy top of that box, right there is when you're going to be at your best. So the stress increases, your performance increases, and that you're in that for the whole game. Too often what I hear from athletes is that they're on the backside of that curve. It's that as the game wore on, despite their best efforts, despite their physical conditioning, they're on the backside of that. They're hanging on late in the game. Maybe you've been there. And so I don't want you hanging on late in the game. And at the same time, I don't want you coming out there for a game and having your hands cold and clammy and your muscles feeling stiff and you're not quite ready to go. I mean, you won't admit that publicly to people, but privately you're inside trying to convince yourself like, man, I'm not just fully ready yet, but I'm hoping that I get there. If that's the case, you're not quite amped up enough. And so it's about hitting the spot on the curve, right at the rectangular box, right at the moment of, let's say in a football game, of kickoff. That right then and there, boom, you're ready to go. Or it's a basketball game and there's a tip-off and now you're ready to go. So how do we do this? Well, most of the time, athletes are too amped up too soon. And I think one big reason why they're amped up too soon is that they're listening to the wrong things on their iPods. That on their iPods, several hours before the games, they're actually listening to music that gets their heart rate going way too loud. You know, something that's got a fast beat to it. I mean, I know you like the song, and I know you think it's getting you into the mindset that you need to be to compete, and you're right, but you're just doing it too soon. In Michael Strahan's case, they found the same. And so what they did was they stopped Michael Strahan from listening to that playlist that had all the songs that would get him amped up, that would get his heart rate really going. And they said you can only listen to that 30 minutes before kickoff, according to this article in Sports Illustrated. When he did that, he was gonna better reach that perfect timing of intensity for the kickoff of the game. So what did he do before those 30 minutes? They put relaxing music on the iPod. Relaxing, soothing music, oftentimes music that doesn't have any lyrics, songs that are just melancholy. I think of relaxing piano music as one example, where there's just a melody to it that keeps you down, that keeps you relaxed. If you've ever been to a fancy restaurant, sometimes they'll play that dinner music that's very soothing in the background, gets you just kind of relax and stay calm. And so that kind of music should be on every athlete's playlist. And I'm encouraging you to listen to that music on the bus ride to and from a game, or if it's a home game and you're in the locker room and it's 2 hours beforehand, listen to this music up until that time, and only you can determine that time when it's time to switch. And when it's time to switch, you put on that song that's really going to get your heart rate going, that's really going to get you fired up. And from that moment on, you're on the upside of that curve. And so the relaxing music was trying to keep you down, keep you down, keep you down, keep you calm, because of course you're going to be nervous and you're going to be anxious before an athletic competition. And so the music is forcing your brainwave into more of an alpha and or a theta brainwave state. This is good. This is relaxed. And then it's time to go. Who should you put on your playlist? What artist? People often ask me. I'm not a big fan of putting classical music on because sometimes the beat of that ebbs and flows too much. But an artist that I really like is a gentleman named Danny Wright, spelled W-R-I-G-H-T, Danny Wright. Great pianist and fantastic music. If you go on Pandora and put him in, or if you do a Google search or iTunes or whatever it may be, and for other artists in that genre, that's just one example of an artist and music that I found has worked for many, many athletes. And not just music, but for some athletes, this is where visualization really comes into play. That if you actually had a visualization mix, something that was set to music, oftentimes sports psychologists like myself will create something for a team that's designed to help them either relax and experience deep relaxation or to visualize themselves performing at a high level while experiencing deep relaxation. And all of that stuff is often used, ideally, several hours before the game to help stay calm, to help stay relaxed. It's very important that you hit the curve at the right time. Because if you hit it too soon, and I can think of one athlete that I recently saw that it was 2 hours before he was going to compete, and he was so amped up, so fired up. I didn't know this athlete, but I said to myself, oh boy, he doesn't realize what he's doing. And sure enough, when he competed and I watched that competition, he came out so fired up, so ready to go. But late in that competition, he wore out and he was broken. He was beaten for sure. I think that competition wasn't won or lost at that moment. I think it was won or lost earlier on. And we've all stepped into that trap of getting too amped up too soon. And there's not much you can do once you've hit that zone too soon. Once you're on the backside of that curve and you feel the energy draining, and on that emotional energy scale, you might say, I start off at a 90, now I'm an 80, now I'm a 70, now I'm a 60, and it's just going. There's not much you can do at that point in time to slow it down, as well as changing the whole optimal performance arousal level on the front side of the curve that you would do in the next competition. I want you guys to show the world what is inside of you and how hard you've been working at those skills and abilities in your sport. And I want you to have that amazing performance that you know in your mind you can do, but maybe the world hasn't seen it yet. But I can assure you that if you apply the principles we're talking about today for the optimal arousal level at the right time, and you can remember this concept of the performance curve, and you apply some of the music to keep your heart rate down, and then you switch to that song you like to get you amped up. Just like Michael Strahan, who had a year to remember, the best year of his career, maybe the best year of your career is coming up. Because just like he did, maybe this one technique might be the one thing that gets you to that next level, that gives you even better the mind of the athlete.